Hello, guys and gals. I've been gone for a while. I was on a trip and I haven't done any videos in a couple of weeks. I did one of my trip, but and some others, and I plan on putting out more of places where I was raised, and there's kind of a reason for that. Um, but I'll talk about that later. But first, I got something I do want to talk about. It's kind of looming in the back of my mind for the longest time, and I feel it's real important. I don't know if you uh, feel that way, but I do. So we're going to talk about that. Stick around.
And now we interrupt, disrupt, and crash this station.
The man fighting for peace, his legacy, truth in a sea of stupid.
Filtered for your sarcastic enjoyment, Ghost Getter.
First of all, I'm going to show you this real quick. It's recent thing that I've seen. It's well, you know, it's a recent story among other things. This actually was today. They plan on sending 10,000 troops to the Middle East. It has to do with Iran. It doesn't matter who is in charge, if it's Trump or somebody else in the future that's in charge. It's prophecy. Everybody knows it. Everybody talks about it. This is the Middle East. The Middle East is supposed to really get into it. Israel and whatnot. And, you know, it says the United States may ratchet up tensions with Iran by sending thousands of troops to the Middle East, preparing for a serious fight. And this is just one of the things that I wanted to discuss. Not in a long term, but something that has to do with this. Now, I've been doing shows about sort of, you know, things that have to do with this, the weird and unusual. And that's not including what people think, like what you see on TV with, you know, ghost stories and whatever. Most of your paranormal shows or TV shows or radio shows like Art Bell and everything have to do with that kind of phenomena. And that's one thing. But there are many other things that people seem to forget about. And that's, you know, things like this that's supposed to happen. Most people don't care. Most people ignore it. They don't want to listen. So I've been doing shows about this stuff for a long time, eons, and and I have not only in my archives I have shows, but I have stacks of CDs. I don't think I can count how many. They're hundreds, and I didn't put everything in my archives. I have. I don't know. It'd probably take me too long to edit and mess with it. But I stopped doing shows for a reason, because people wanted to argue. People didn't want to listen. People got mad. People got, you know, this and that and this and that. And I said, well, I don't want to come back and do any shows unless I got actual people that really want to listen, actually really care. I think the only reason most were drawn into it because they just wanted to hear about some haunted place by the same old ghosts that you hear about all the time. Same old EVPs, same old door closing, same old. The ghost adventure stuff, which I don't follow anymore because it turns out that I uncovered stuff about places that weren't true. The ghost stories were not real. They were made up. They were urban legends and things like that, but he went with it anyway as truthful, even though he knew about it. So I stopped doing shows about that because people were big fans and they didn't care if it was true. They didn't care if it was false. They just, you know, they just kept going on and on and on about it. So I stopped doing shows because people didn't really want to hear it. So I decided I'd go to YouTube and start doing stuff on YouTube, which, you know, thankfully I got people that want to follow. Even though they may not agree with everything I say, I still have people that follow and things like that. So I might get back into doing shows about that. I have this thing about and I post the places that I were grown up and raised in. And I had this thing about when I was younger, I'd get bullied growing up in this house that I lived in by things that were demonic. If it wasn't for the nighttime when I'd sleep and get bullied, it would be in the daytime I would get bullied by physical people. It was one thing or another. So I grew up like that. And I think the reason being is because I grew up in a religion where they followed the Bible more than anyone else that I know of. They had a tendency to say, if it says it in here, this is what we're going to do. If the Bible says we're going to, this is not right, that's not right, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, we're going to follow what it says in here because the book said so. You can't make a book about, learn something about mathematics, algebra, calculus, whatever, and you're learning this in school, and you're learning this, and you're teaching it as well, and I don't know what it is, and you get results from it all the time, but you say, I don't agree with it, I'm not going to teach it, even though this is what it is, and this is the truth, and this is what the answer is, I'm still not going to teach it, I'm not going to learn it that way, I'd rather do it my own way. But it doesn't matter if you do it your own way, this is what it is. This is the ultimate answer. This is the ultimate truth of what's going on. I always find it funny that there are ministers and preachers and things out there, and I've talked about Bob Larson on here, that stand in their hands holding that same Bible, preaching from that same Bible, knowing full well that there are things that say in that Bible coming from prophets, coming from people like Christ that said, what you're doing is not the law. It is not what God wants you to do. God said, no, this is not the way you're supposed to do things. You're not supposed to, follow and worship pagan holidays, and, list goes on and on and on. But we still stand there like a priest, preacher, or whoever, minister, holding that Bible and ignore the things that are in it. So I mentioned this, and people did not agree with this. People with their thumbs down on my pages or getting in here and calling me all kinds of names, and which fully they don't know anything about me. Very little, but that gives them the okay to go ahead and attack me. But these are the kind of things that are going on, and it's no different. Actually, it's worse than doing the shows and people getting mad when I was doing the shows and talking about this stuff, knowing that there is evidence that these people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, knowing that there's evidence that these people are lying to you, there's evidence that people are trying to, manipulate you, and so on and so on, but you still follow them. So I'm not getting that. I've always liked to do shows on music because growing up, that's the only thing I really had. Being in the neighborhood I grew up in and how dangerous it was and all the stuff I would go through at night and all that, and I didn't really have anything to fall into, so I fell into music. So that's all it would run in my head, and that's pretty much, that and other things, but but I would follow it, and I would have this ability to remember everything and study everything and everything that has to do with music. So that's why I created a station, because I couldn't get jobs in radio because I'm at the age now where they only want younger people. And the sad thing is they have younger people doing 80s shows and younger people doing 90s shows. And some of these people weren't even born in the 80s, and some of them don't even remember the 90s, but they have them doing shows like they're experts, and they're really not. I think if you should have someone doing 70s, 80s, and 90s shows, you should have somebody that has knowledge of what they're doing. So I do have that knowledge, but I couldn't get work in it. So I said, you know what? And I'm still even doing it now where I want to do these shows on air and I want to do them for free. Even some of the stations I say, you know what? I'll do it for free because I'd love to do it. It gets my foot in the door, gets me, foot in the door in FM radio. I already had my foot in the door creating my own station, doing my own shows for years, and having the knowledge I have since I was a child. But basically, it gets me into FM, and that's something I've always wanted to do. To me, that's like the ultimate job. And it's not really a job for me. It's something that, if you love doing what you do, it's not a job. But there have been a few times where I'd run into people that had stations and I was willing to do it, because I love to do it, but no answer, denied, whatever the case may be. I think it's because they see my other shows that I talk about and they think I'm going to bring that into music, and it's not, and that's a totally separate thing. But that's why I created my own station. I said, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. I'm going to try to create this time travel experience to let people get a feel like people always love to live in the past and memories and things they remember, and they love the Goonie movies and Back to the Future, and they love everything that has to do with the 80s and the 70s and the 90s and grunge and all that stuff. And so they want to get back into that and sometimes relive those days and relive those memories. And that's why I created the radio stations, where I add in some of those memories, like the commercials and the news reports and the music and things like that. That's what I did with the radio station. And I don't get a whole lot of listeners. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the station. Maybe people don't like it. I'm certainly thinking the problem is that not a lot of people know about it. I'm not the best promoter. I don't go around doing flyers and handing every business card to everybody I run into on the street. That's just not what I'm good at. I love doing the station and I love doing the radio. So I eventually, and I think in the next week or so, I'm going to go ahead and start getting on air as much as I can. I'm working a job now where it takes 12 hours a day, and it tears me apart. If I had a job where I was making money doing this, I would do it in a heartbeat. That's why I have Patreon. That's why I have PayPal. I got this, and, my computer is 10 years old now, so it's probably not too far away from going out, so I have to get new program and new computer, and the DRS program for my audio system is 2006. So things like that. So that's why I created Patreon and created PayPal to get donations and stuff like that. And I don't get that. So I just got to do with what I can, get a job, work that job as hard as I can. It tears me up. I'm already having physical problems walking and things like that because it's constant run all day. So I do what I can to keep this station afloat, and I love to get on air, but some days I get off and I'm like, I don't feel like doing nothing. I just don't want to do anything. And so I also got eBay to maybe raise some money to do some stuff, and one day I'll have the money to, because these programs, new programs and stuff like that, are not cheap. The only reason I go out of town is because I get my plane fare cheap, and I get the hotel free, and things like that. That's the only reason. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be going out of town. So I'm pretty grateful that I have these opportunities to visit other cities that I would never see in my lifetime. So I'm pretty grateful for that. Anyway, my rant. So I would love to do shows about that other stuff, but people are getting angry with me and things like that, and it's not to be mean. It's not to be a jerk. I'm just telling you what I know, and I'm telling you what I'm seeing. And I'm telling you what I've learned since I was born into this. I was basically born into this stuff, okay? So when I see things about Iran, Russia, and China looming over our heads, and now we got stuff going on in Europe where they're combining, I'm seeing the exact same things that people have been saying for years. Things that I've been told that is in the Bible, Ezekiel, and things like that. You can't tell me you don't notice it. You can't tell me that you don't feel somewhere in the back of your mind that something is not right. Something is coming very, very soon. You can't tell me you don't feel that. There has been more exorcisms in per capita recently than in our history, which means more and more people are becoming possessed. More and more people are having mental issues, more than you have ever seen in your life. There are more children now with autism and all kinds of brain deficiencies and things that are going on with them mentally than I've ever seen in my lifetime. I know that people say, well, it wasn't really diagnosed back then. I'm telling you, there are people a lot more normal than I was growing up everywhere. Now it's like every other child is nearly in a comatose state, and you don't know why. So, and now we're seeing people saying they don't want God or religion anymore. They're accepting Satanism. And we've seen all this going on, which is pretty crazy. And I was going to do a story on that, how one state is accepting Satanism as religion and, giving them a tax write-off, just like all religions, and accepting them as that. But my issue wasn't exactly that. My issue was the fact that we are attacking more religions now and blaming God for the violence, and attacking more religions now and trying to eliminate them and get rid of them and have nothing to do with them. But things like that go untouched. Things like that are totally just ignored, and the excuse is, well, they have a right just like anybody else. That is so manipulative. That is so deceiving. It's not even funny. Now, you can't tell me you don't notice these are dark times. When you hear a guy on a radio station that tells a story, and I don't mean to now take your kids out of the room because this is recent, tells a story of a man that saws off his mother's head, and afterwards he says, this is just proof that we are in our end times. He is not a religious person that I have ever heard him, and I've been listening to this early morning talk show for years, and he doesn't ever mention religion, but he brings that up, tells you something. Even he notices that. Most people that are not religious knows that, feel like there is something going on, something is wrong. And we see people with the craziest, disgusting violence that we've ever seen before. It just goes on and on and on. The things we accept a female coming over there and tell you, well, I'm not female. Okay, well, then you're male. And vice versa. We accept that. And ignore the truth of this person is not male, is not female. We ignore that. And then we say, well, we complain and say, well, I follow science 110%. I don't believe in God because it's not scientifically proven. But science and biology says this person is female or male. It shows it. There's proof of that. And then they say, well, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm not going to believe that. You want to believe the science when it comes to God, but you don't want to believe the science when it comes to a person and their gender. That is beyond my understanding, okay? We have more people with mental issues than ever before, but someone that has that problem doesn't have a mental problem. There's no mental issues. They're completely normal. We don't even bother We don't even bother checking them and doing any kind of therapy or any kind of psychology to find out if maybe it's them. No, we just say that they're female when they're not female, or say that they're male when they're not male. And that's acceptable. This is the world we're living in now. And you can't tell me that there isn't something wrong with the way things are going, that strange things are afoot. We've never seen the things that are going on now in our history, but they are going on. Now, when Bible prophecy says that there's going to be tension in the Middle East, there are going to be problems going on, this is going on, that's going to happen, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and we're seeing that, we put our thumbs down and say, well, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to believe you. And that's fine. You don't have to listen. You don't have to believe anything I say. That is totally your decision. But don't stand there following a guy like Bob Larson, who carries a Bible in his hand, and you carry a Bible in your hand, but you don't want to listen to what's in it. You don't want to follow what's in it. You don't want to believe what's in it. But you make the excuse, oh, that's in the Old Testament. Oh, that's in the past. And you make the excuse, but you still carry the Bible in your hand. You still follow the guy that carries the Bible in his hand. If you're not going to follow it, if you're not going to listen to it, if it's what it says is in there, or you can't pick and choose what pages you want to follow. It's either one through the last one or none at all. What did Christ say about hot and cold? And I'm not a perfect person. I'm a sinner just like anybody else. And I fully admit that. But I also am not going to be a hypocrite and stand there and deny something that is in there. And stand there and say, I don't follow the Bible while I'm holding it in my hand. Or stand there and deny the Bible and follow religion that's supposed to follow the Bible. Either you follow it or you don't follow it, but you can't do in between. You can't do, well, I'm going to hold this in my hand just to make myself look good. It doesn't make any sense. You're either one way or you're another. But you can't tell me that I'm wrong when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing to begin with. So that goes out to the people that have been making rotten comments about me that are supposed to be religious, that aren't following what it says in the Bible. Of course, you know, there are all kinds of places in the Bible that talk about pagan holidays, and you're following them. So that doesn't make any sense to me. When God said no, it means no. You can't be telling me that you're greatly religious since the day you were born, and it says in the Bible, do not follow psychics or witchcraft or divination tools, and in the paranormal, you do this. You still do it. You still follow Bob Larson, and you watch ghost shows and believe what psychics tell you over what God told you. And those people out there that say that they believe in ghosts and people that come up from the grave, when it says in the Bible the dead know nothing. They have no memory of them. There's no memory of them at all. They're non-existent. They die. They don't get back up. They're turned to dust. They do not come back raised from the dead. It says that, and you choose to ignore it. I have been in this life since I was born. There have been many occasions where I was fooled into thinking one way or another because they're cunning, they're deceiving, they know what they're doing. There have been many occasions where I've opened my eyes and realized what it is. And all of a sudden, the tables turn 110%. You go into a place that supposedly is haunted by children, and you have all kinds of child noises and child things and all this stuff, children-wise, go on. But then you realize these aren't children at all. This stuff is satanic. All of a sudden, they're not children anymore. You start hearing cursing at you and stuff being thrown around the room and stuff gets very violent. But all the excuse is You keep hearing this excuse coming from other people. Well, there's another violent ghost in there who's just angry that he died. But there's no proof of this. The story is made up. But you bring this up, and 20 or 30 people follow it and believe it. But there's no proof of it. There's nothing in the Bible. At least the Bible tells you something. But you're going to follow what someone tells you by telling me that I don't follow the Bible because it was written by man. But you're going to follow a psychic, which is a man, who tells you what a ghost said that is following another ghost, which was a man, supposedly, and his spirit guide, which was another man, telling you, supposedly, that this is what the child said, which was another human being, supposedly. But you're not going to believe the Bible because a man wrote it. Okay. Well, anyway, my point is, and I keep bringing up these points, and I'm sorry, but I had to talk about this whole thing and had to get into it. I would like to know, personally, what you like about this channel. Is it the shows? Is it what I tell you about? Is it stuff? Is it the stuff that goes on in the world? What is it that you like about this channel? Is it the stories? Because I have a ton of them. There's still things that go on with me all the time. All the time. I just don't always say it. Some are just a few second things. Some are like really, really outrageous. But is it that or is it something else? You let me know what you think. And I would like to know, by judging by the archives you listen to and what you've heard on this channel, if you would like to have me start doing regular live shows on it, just let me know. I mean, I had a radio show where I would do talk show and music in between, and no, not a lot of people would have that out there. I don't even think anyone had it, period. I think I started that. It's been copied, so I do know that. But I'd like to get back into radio shows, but I like to also do music shows, because that's what my knowledge is. I like to go live on air with music, and I'm still doing that. I'm going to start doing that because I'm missing it. Now, I intentionally remembered things for a reason in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know why, but something told me to remember everything that goes on. As much as you can, put in your brain, remember it. And I can remember going way back to the first time my cable was turned on, and the first time I turned on MTV, I remember thinking in my head, remember what the first video you see here today as soon as you turn on the TV, because it's going to be very important to you in the future. I remember thinking that. And I remember the very first video I saw was Mickey by Tony Basil, and that was brand new back then. So I remember thinking, remember everything you see in the news as much as you can, the commercials, the music, remember the interviews, remember everything about this decade, 70s, 80s, 90s, everything. Remember as much as you can about the decade as possible. The older you get, you're going to forget, you're going to lose your mind, and things are going to start to go. But remember everything, because it's going to be important for you one day. And sure enough, it is, because it's because of radio and other things. It's important that I do remember, and I did remember everything that goes on, because if it wasn't for that, I can't tell you or teach you or show you things that are going on today that weren't happening 20 or 30 years or 40 years ago, or even maybe 10 years ago. So it is important. I'm missing the interaction with other people. I have a whole lot of things I'd like to put out on here, a whole lot of things I'd like to talk about. But my main concern is I can feel something not right, and I can feel something that's going on right now. I get worried about it constantly. The fear is there all the time. And there is going to be no escape for anyone. I keep thinking of ways to escape it, and I think the only escape is God. Now, that is the only escape. But I know something is not right. I worry about it in a sense that I worry about my family, what's going to happen to them. I definitely am not selfish about this at all. I don't think about me. I think about my family. I think about other people around me. I don't want to see them suffer. I don't want to see you suffer. I don't want to see anyone go through what's about to happen. And that worries me. That scares me. And I don't, there is no way out. These things, as long as the world don't change, as long as we keep going the way we're going, as long as we continue to ignore what I've just told you, as long as we're going to just bother, not even going to bother, we keep not playing by the rules, as long as all this stuff that goes on, it's going to happen. We have an opportunity to stop it, but it takes a combination of everyone to band together to not do the things we're doing. And it looks like that's not going to happen. There's too much money invested in violence. There's too much money invested in pornography and things like that. There's too much money invested in Satanism. There's too many people involved that refuse to leave it. There's too many people involved that are too addicted to things that they shouldn't be addicted to. And yet we make excuses for addiction by saying it's a disease, but no one forced you to take the things you're taking. No one forced you by a gun to your head to be a drug addict, to be a porn addict, to be a gambler. No one forced you to do all this, but we continue in this world to make excuses for the things that we do. We blame somebody. We can't blame ourselves. We blame everybody else. We don't take responsibility for our actions anymore. No one takes responsibility for their actions anymore. We're not being held accountable. The crap is about to hit the fan, and all our government is doing is complaining about Trump doing this and Trump doing that. This is bickering, fighting back and forth, one and the other, back and forth. Democrats, Republicans arguing, back and forth. Media just arguing. I can't turn on the TV anymore. That's all they're talking about, back and forth. And meanwhile, we have Iran and China looming over our heads, about to do some ugly damage that could put the entire world into chaos. The entire world will suffer. Millions will die on everyone's side. No one's going to win regardless of what happens. No one's going to win in this argument. And we just refuse to change. So, I'm sorry I bored you if I did. I just want to give you an update of what's going on. I want to come back and do shows about stuff like this, but I also want to do music shows because it's my love of joy. Listen to the radio station. Keep listening. Check it out. I do things in between songs. If there's any opinions or stuff you'd like me to add in, kind of comment on here and tell me, do you remember this commercial, or do you remember this story in the news, or do you remember this thing? I completely forgotten about Pogs, and somebody brought that up, and I said, oh crap, we can talk about Pogs. I'll add that in on my station where there was a news story about Pogs. You remember that in the 90s? So I talked about that, and other things as well that was completely forgotten. So let me know your opinion, and I'm sorry if I got in here and just bored the heck out of you, but I want to give you an update, and people are just wishing, and I'm sorry it's long, but until next time, which I plan on doing some stuff that's pretty serious and add it on Facebook in the next day or two. Or not Facebook, but YouTube. Follow the station. Follow me on Facebook. I don't get on Twitter as much, but I do have a Twitter account. Patreon for donations and all that good stuff. Follow me on the website. Until next time, I appreciate everybody being a part of it. And until I keep burning my desk because I don't have a decent camera. But so I don't do a whole lot of walking around. But until next time when I talk to you guys, gals, and everybody, I love you. Thank you for everything. And I'll see you next time. Later. Hey everybody, don't forget to check out Reverse 96 FM on TuneIn, Streama, and now InternetRadio.com.